So Trump's lapdog is back in the news again, and this time it's being reported that he was throwing F-bombs at a trade event in Ontario. Are we really surprised though? I mean, if the Supreme Leader does it, then I guess Pete thinks it's fair game as well.
That they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
You know why? Because he doesn't want to around with the United States.
This whole thing just reaffirms my stance on Pete, and the Trump regime in general. And in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Today's backdrop comes from Dan, all the way from the Netherlands. He sent in this photo of our Canadian War Cemetery, a powerful reminder of how our two countries can show mutual respect. I thought it would be a perfect choice for today's video, since both Canada and the Netherlands have their fair share of experience with Mr. Hoekstra. So thank you, Dan, for sending this over. And also thank you to the citizens of the Netherlands for continuing to take such good care of our Canadian fallen soldiers. And before I start, congrats to the Toronto Blue Jays on their 6-1 win last night. I'm not going to say much more because I don't want to jinx it, but I have a feeling that Toronto is going to be absolutely rocking tonight. I found this headline from CBC and I kind of find it a little bit misleading. The headline shouldn't be Carney, Trump, keep it civil. It should be Trump controls his temper in South Korea. Just a bit of a nitpick. But anyways, let's take a look at the video.
To South Korea now, where Prime Minister Mark Carney is on a mission to boost trade with Asia. U.S. President Donald Trump is also there, and the two leaders met across a table today, but not in the way you might think. The two leaders were invited to a dinner hosted by South Korea's president. It followed a searing post today by Donald Trump on social media that he was not in the country to meet with Canada. Despite that awkwardness of the situation, the two seemed to interact positively. A reporter later asked the Prime Minister if he had spoken to Trump, and here's that quick exchange.
Dinner, Prime Minister, you chat with the President at all, sir?
Very good. I had a very good conversation with all the presidents.
Okay. It baffles me that the President of the United States is acting so childish over a TV ad. I see the ad as Canada standing up for itself, finally. And from what I've read on social media and Reddit, a lot of people in the US agree that Canada did with that tariff ad what the Democrats should have done a long time ago. So no matter what you think about the ad, it really shows a level of maturity coming from the president, and it's a reminder why the United States government simply cannot be trusted. In my opinion, this was never about the ad.
Okay, so a brief response there. Carney said he's had productive trade conversations ahead of the APEC summit. The CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian is traveling with the Prime Minister, and he has more on the visit to South Korea and what transpired between Carney and Donald Trump at that working dinner.
They kind of pointed at each other when the U.S. president arrived into that room. He was the last of the 8 leaders at that dinner to get there, and sort of pointed at Carney, the Prime Minister pointing at him back. It's hard to tell if they actually spoke, though. There is some sense that they exchanged a quick word, but no cameras were close enough to capture that audio. And certainly we were told by a Canadian government official that Prime Minister Carney had no intention of interacting with the president this evening.
I'm glad Prime Minister Mark Carney had no intention to speak to him. What's done is done, and Canada should stay focused on the progress made from the trip to Southeast Asia and South Korea. Eventually, sure, we have to get back to the table with the United States, but with Trump's temper, now is definitely not the right time. Now moving on to another immature man-child. Pete Hoekstra manages to embarrass himself and his country again. Seems like this is a monthly routine for him at this point.
Meantime, the U.S. ambassador to Canada reportedly lashed out in a big way at Ontario's trade representative at an event in Ottawa Monday. Sources tell CTV News there was an unpleasant exchange between Pete Hoekstra and Ontario's Washington trade rep David Patterson. The sources say the U.S. ambassador hurled insults and swore over Ontario's anti-tariff ad. Patterson was said to be calm during the tirade. Last week, President Trump abruptly ended trade talks with Canada over the commercial and then imposed that 10% tariff on Canada. With me now is CTV's political commentator, Scott Reid. Scott, good morning to you. So, Canada-U.S. relations appear to be at a real low point. What do you make of these reports of Pete Hoekstra using expletives at David Patterson at a public event?
No, it's to be expected. It's actually in keeping with Ambassador Hoekstra's pattern since he took over the office as chief diplomat to Canada. I mean, he's been overtly insulting time and time again, and that shouldn't surprise any of us either, because Donald Trump doesn't appoint diplomats in the traditional sense of saying, I want an envoy that can smooth relations, that can work with folks, that can build up a bunch of relationships and back channel. He doesn't want any of that. He wants someone who will yell and stamp their feet in the same way that he does.
Exactly. Since day one, Pete has been gaslighting Canadians, saying we're the ones that are nasty. We're the ones that are wrong for taking the liquor off the shelves. And we're the ones that are wrong for boycotting the US. And now he's throwing F-bombs and insults at Canadian citizens. This kind of behavior is a reflection of the person who hired him, but it's also a reflection of the people who voted this party into power. In my opinion, for the next 3 years, Pete Hoekstra is going to keep being a pain in the ass on Canadian soil. I honestly envy the Netherlands who were able to kick him out of the country. Some of you have said in the comments on my previous video about Pete that kicking him out of Canada would just cause more problems. Well, how much worse can it get than it already is? I saw a comment on Reddit that summed it up perfectly. The whole mess with the ads, Pete Hoekstra, Trump's tantrums, has pushed many Canadians to the point of saying, fuck it, it's gone this far. Let's just keep moving forward without the US. And I completely agree with that. I'm tired of walking on eggshells around Trump and his ridiculous ambassador.
So it's important for Ambassador Hoekstra to be seen as swearing and cursing and losing his temper, because he wants the President of the United States, his boss, to see that that's how he's conducting himself, because that's what it takes to get approval from the boss in this upside down, backwards world in which we live, now led by Donald Trump. So I'm disappointed. I think it's despairing in many ways, but it shouldn't surprise any of us. This is how the Trump White House administration, this is how Trump world works.
Meantime, we have seen our prime minister remain cool throughout all of this. He told reporters that he had a good conversation with Trump while they were at that dinner. What do you make of that?
Well, what else is he supposed to do? He's got to kind of carry on and just manage his way through this. A couple of things. First of all, I think the script has been flipped for Carney. I think he thought prior to this explosion over the Ontario ad that he would probably end up cementing some kind of side deal on energy and aluminum, steel with the President of the United States. That would be the centerpiece of this trip, even as he then looks and works to expand relations with Asian countries and other partners. Well, now that's the centerpiece of it. That is unavailable to him. And he's got something of a repair job with the White House. I think it's also clarifying, though, in the sense that it's a reminder that Trump is the villain in this movie, and there's no dealing with him. You can't speak truth to him because, of course, that's offensive if it is contradictory to his worldview. And, you can't really rely on his word. If he's going to have a temper tantrum over something as silly as this ad, what is the good?
And this has been my stance from the start. A lot of people say that the ad was bad timing, that it would upset Trump. Now is not the time, and you just don't poke the bear. But as I said in previous videos, whether it was the ad or something else, Trump would have had another temper tantrum eventually. Some might argue there's no proof of that. But come on, let's be realistic. We know the pattern now. What surprised me, though, is that I actually agree with everything the CTV political commentator said. For the first time in a long time, someone is finally saying on air exactly what everyday citizens are thinking.
And what is the virtue of an agreement with him? So in some ways, it's clarifying. Focus on what else you can do. We're going to have no choice, thanks to Donald Trump, but to reach out and to try to strengthen ties with China. That's a consequence of Trump's foreign policy. He's driving allies into the arms of China. And we'll have to see where else we can knit those relationships with the likes of Korea, Malaysia, and others. So, I mean, that's the card. That's the set of cards that the Prime Minister is now left to play.
Do you think that talks with the U.S. will be back on track soon?
I don't know what soon means. At some point, I think, relations will start to restore. The Prime Minister, the President of the United States, he's an infant. He's an enfant terrible. He has a little temper tantrum. He tosses his rattle at someone and then he forgets about it a little while later. So I think that he's put us, so to speak, in the penalty box. But we'll get out. I don't know if it's a 2-minute minor or a 4-minute major, but we'll get out of that penalty box.
It's probably a 10-minute misconduct for hurting his feelings and a 5-minute major for spearing his heart with the truth. It's not often I get to throw in a hockey reference when doing a report, so this one felt a little too perfect to pass up.
The question we have to ask ourselves is, how much do we really want at this point to try to strike a deal with Donald Trump? What would that deal look like? Would that actually be in our future interest? Or strategically, is it better for us to let the dust settle on other deals as Trump frantically scrambles to try to repair his relationship with China, which is now genuinely threatening the U.S. economy? Do we wait and see how all that settles out and then see if there's a better deal to be had?
Scott Reed for us this morning. Scott, thank you so much. Appreciate seeing you this morning.
What the hell is going on? Every single thing this guy said, I actually agree with. I had to double check to see that this was actually coming from CTV. And yeah, it was. Anyways, I completely agree with him. Prime Minister Mark Carney just met with other leaders from across Southeast Asia and other parts of Asia as well. And now is the exact time to see what kind of partnerships can be built with them and not try to deal with the Trump administration. Because who knows, a deal with these nations could end up reducing some of Canada's reliance on the United States. This is the time for Canada to focus on building real productive partnerships elsewhere. Now going back to Pete Hoekstra, I want you to hear CBC's version of what actually happened.
The CBC's Ashley Burke joins me now with more on this. So Ashley, this is the talk of the town. Tell us what happened exactly at this event.
And this latest incident involving the U.S. ambassador, as you mentioned, it happened here in Ottawa on Monday at this really high-profile event that's attended by a lot of people in Ottawa and D.C. And normally at the event, there is a joint toast with the U.S. and Canada's ambassador where they deliver some remarks. And this year, sources say just one person was up doing that speech this year and that toast, and that was the Canadian side, just showing you how tense the whole situation is right now.
Right. Okay. So Pete Hoekstra is berating David Patterson, the Ontario trade representative to Washington, and coarse language was used. And then there was no joint toast, as we typically see at these things.
So Pete Hoekstra got his feelings hurt, picked up his toys, and stormed off. Sounds exactly like what his boss did over the TV ad, doesn't it? And if anyone thinks right now that this is the last tirade we'll see from Pete Hoekstra, you are seriously underestimating him.
An unusual night in this town and led to some unusual and strong reaction, some from the Premier of Ontario today.
Yeah, Ontario's Premier Doug Ford came out today and he said that there should be an apology from the U.S. ambassador, that he should make amends with his trade minister, David Patterson, and really try to put this behind them and move forward. Here's what he said.
Come on, Ambassador. He's a guy, you know something? I like him. Pete, you got to call Dave up and apologize. It's simple. You know, the cheese slipped off the cracker. I get it. You're ticked off.
So you heard him there comment on the trade representative, Ontario's trade representative, David Patterson. So far, there is no sign of an apology. And on the Hill today.
When have we ever heard an apology from anyone in the Trump administration? My guess is we never will. When you got people who never think they're wrong, consistently gaslight others into believing it's their fault, the word apology just doesn't exist in their vocabulary. Now this next part, the reporter gets reactions on both sides of the border. What really stood out is a second-hand report saying that people in Washington think the ads and Doug Ford are the problem. Are we surprised? No. Let's take a look.
Some Liberal MPs, when I was up there scrumming people on the way into caucus, were saying this just really shows how high the level of frustration is on both sides. Here's what a few people said.
Swearing in general in this business crosses the line and typically tends to be unprofessional and undignified, not something that we usually see from diplomats.
He's entitled to his opinion. I would say maybe it indicates it was a pretty effective ad.
But a Bloc Québécois MP who was recently in Washington told us that they heard from people there on the ground that a big problem was Ford's anti-Trump rhetoric, his approach to this all, and then that's been a point of tension in talks. And we have some sources saying the same thing was brought up as a trade irritant as well. Our colleague Kate McKenna reported. And he said that basically, from his perspective, the problem really is Ford and the approach that he's taking here, and that's the problem.
Okay, interesting, considering the Americans started this whole thing. But here we are. That's Ashley, the CBC's Ashley Burke. Ashley, thank you very much. All right.
The last thing he said is what really matters. The U.S. started the whole thing, and Canada is simply responding. Pete Hoekstra and the right will never admit it, because in their world, they're never wrong. They'll never see that other countries are just reacting to their own behavior. Like I've said before, retaliatory tariffs exist for a reason. That's how you stand up to a bully. If you don't push back, they're going to keep gaslighting you and walking all over you. This is why I don't see the ad as an issue. If there was a sane president in the office, one who didn't get his feelings hurt every time someone on social media or in the press challenged his ego, this wouldn't even be a story. Canada just told the truth about tariffs, and Pete and Trump didn't like it. But now it's time for Canada and other nations too to stand up to the bully. If you found this video helpful, hit the like and subscribe button and share it with your friends. And if you're interested in seeing more of my videos, check out the ones that are showing up on your screen now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.